We recently got a chance to sit down with Alexei from Interlay and talk about Kintsugi, their Kusama parachain, which has been making some news around their collaborations with several other high-profile parachain projects. They also just went live on Polkadot with their Interlay parachain, and we learned more about what to expect from this exciting project. Welcome to the Parachain Auctions podcast. I'm Brian Hoffman, crypto platform product lead, and on this show you'll hear from leaders and innovators around the world building parachains on Polkadot and Kusama. Tune in for insights from the best and brightest about their new projects. Whether this is the first you've heard of parachains or you're a DeFi aficionado, come with us behind the scenes as we explore the technology of the future today. All right, so today we have with us Alexei Zamyatin, the co-founder and CEO of Interlay, who is joining us for, I believe, it's maybe the third time we've had you on, or is it the second time? I can't even recall. I think the last time we had you on was around October.
I think it's the third time.
A couple weeks ago, I believe you guys won the 10th slot on Polkadot with Interlay. So that's really exciting. Congratulations on that.
Thanks a lot.
It's incredible, the amount of stuff going on with you guys. Well, at this point, have you been able to kind of build some more support on the team? Like, how big is the team now? I saw on your Twitter feed you guys were hiring.
That's true. So we are 18 people right now. Plus, we have a pool of copywriters who help us to educate the community, and we're hiring 8 new roles. So we're expanding fairly quickly. So also kind of a call to action for anyone listening.
That's pretty awesome. Other things that have been kind of floating through the community that I've noticed is it's just like partnership after partnership after partnership with all these different parachains on Kusama. And I know you just won the Polkadot chain, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But just kind of looking back at the last few months since we spoke with you last, like, tell us a little bit about some of these like collaborations you're doing. I mean, I see you guys are opening up XCM channels with all kinds of different groups and a lot of exciting work going on. Maybe you can highlight some of the things really that people are excited about.
Absolutely. So as you already mentioned, XCM is obviously a very, very big target for us because our goal is to bring Bitcoin to the entire Kusama and Polkadot ecosystems. And of course, this means to Moonriver, Karura, Akala, Moonbeam, and all the other parachains. So what we've done so far is we've opened XCM channels with Moonriver and Karura. And in fact, last week, actually this week, we already had the first DeFi integration on Zenlink. And this is all preparation for bringing Bitcoin over to Moonriver applications. Right now, it's mostly done with our governance token, which we use to do first integrations, really make sure we level the playing field. And then once KBTC is live, which is happening very soon, we will then have a very quick path to integrate with DeFi applications on Moonriver, Karura, and then, of course, all other parachains that have won the crowd loan so far.
Yeah, it's a lot of really compelling use cases I think are popping up out of here. We've had the luxury of talking with most of these other teams, but kind of prior to them going live, and so now we're starting to see the actual fruits of the labor. All these teams coming up. We just spoke with someone from the Web3 Foundation, and talking a lot about how XCM is going to evolve and how those capabilities are going to get even stronger over time. So I think that's really, really important for the parachain ecosystem. So I saw also, I didn't get a chance to go. I really wanted to go, but last month there was the huge ETH Denver event. And I know it wasn't just your team, but like there were several other Polkadot parachain teams out there. I'm just really curious. It's an Ethereum conference, but like, what was the reception like for you guys? Like, were people really digging the Polkadot Kusama work? Like, how did it go?
So I didn't go personally, but 3 of our team members went, and I think the reception was very positive, surprisingly. We had a workshop that was completely overbooked, and then from what I heard, also the sessions on Substrate and all the other sessions that were hosted by Parity were very well attended. So I think overall, with this new push to L2s, people are very open to explore the technologies, and Polkadot essentially offers you this alternative to not have to use an L2, but actually a full-fledged network of different blockchains, plus a very interesting framework to build new systems with. So I do think, from what I heard, the reception is quite positive.
That's really great to hear. I think we're still several months away from the merge on the Ethereum side, and so I'm sure people are, even though it's exciting to build on ETH, like I think Polkadot is has demonstrated an ability to I mean, it's functioning smoothly. That's pretty exciting. Like a lot of the other, ETH killers or layer one networks that have kind of popped up had a lot of like really rough patches early on, and I think Polkadot has demonstrated its resiliency there. One of the things that we had a discussion about on one of the previous podcasts was around kind of governance and like the role of the council and all these things. I mean, I'm just curious from your perspective, like how has that worked out for you guys? Do you feel like the current kind of governance process has been like very effective in helping you guys accomplish what you want to do, or do you think there's a lot of work to like maybe improve things?
So it's both, right? So we've had both good and not so good experiences. I think, like with everything, when we needed funding, for example, to launch a testnet program to incentivize very early testing of the bridge, council was super fast to move. And these kinds of proposals, I think, if you ask for it and if teams find good ideas, then council is very, very fast to execute. Then we had also proposals around the common goods chain, and back then it was still not very clear what common good blockchains or parachains would actually do. So that kind of turned out to not really work out for us, which is why we're now launching as Parachains. I think what we definitely need to do is simplify the process for teams. Polkadot's governance is very interesting, but it's also a bit complex. And I think to the bystander, to new Polkadot users, it might be overwhelming. So we were actually talking with other Parachain teams of how we can make this easier for new teams to receive funding, and also how we can push infrastructure providers and wallet providers to really adopt Polkadot and incentivize them to onboard. And we see a lot of other foundations announcing large pools that are due to be used for development. And we really hope that we can achieve something like that with the treasury, because in the end, Polkadot's treasury is huge. And I think even Gavin tweeted essentially call for actions that people should submit proposals. And the question right now is, and we're actually actively brainstorming, is why, like, how can we make this so easy that people just go ahead, pitch an idea, and really can focus on building rather than the administrative process? A comment to make here is that Polkadot is also moving to a new governance form. I think it's not fully announced yet. There are rumors, but I think also this new format will hopefully make it, let's say, liquid, I think is the right term here.
So, that being said, you kind of focused on some ideas on how, the Polkadot or, the foundation can kind of incentivize developers to build more on the platform and like make things better. But like from the user's perspective, like what do you think is like the biggest roadblock or maybe like impediment to really taking off for like the average user?
I think wallet support is very important. We have Fearless, we have Nova now, with Talisman coming on board. And with these different options, I think this kind of, and the competition, it pushes wallets to become better and better and better. And I think that's really the first big step. The other big one is a browser extension. Polkadot.js is a signer, it's not a wallet. And we need something like MetaMask. Now, Talisman is making the first step here, and I really hope that others will follow. There's sub-wallet and a whole ecosystem coming up. And what I see is, of course, if I need to transfer tokens between different parachains, it's still not very easy. It's not a snip of a finger. It's still a process of figuring out, okay, how do I pay fees? Do I need tokens on the other chain? Whereas in MetaMask on Ethereum, you just hit swap, transfer, and you're good to go. So the goal, I think, is, and when this will really take off, is when users don't notice that they're moving between parachains. Once we get to that point, that it feels like one chain, like one ecosystem, then it will become much more familiar to people who come from Ethereum and other monolith blockchain constructions, I think. So that's kind of, from my perspective, the biggest kind of challenge at the moment.
So that's also something that was brought up early on in our podcast discussions with teams. Before they were winning auctions, is this like, oh, we need to get to this kind of like nirvana state of just like fluidity between all of the different parachains. I mean, how do you feel at this point in time now, having launched your Kusama chain and you've won the Polkadot one? Like, how do you feel that's progressing? Are we getting closer, or do you feel like perhaps we're building a lot of kind of intermediate technology to kind of work around this limitation?
That's a good question. I mean, from my perspective and from the experience we've had so far, and I hope I got the question right, to be fair, connecting between different parachains is getting easier by the day. So
Hmm.
our first integrations with Moonriver, we had to figure out, okay, do we build the interface for people to bridge assets, or do we integrate with another one? But then we see now that ZenLink and already Moonriver and other applications have these built in. And I think that's already making it very easy to users that don't really care, hey, am I on Kintsugi or am I on Moonriver? No, I'm actually using ZenLink. That's what I care about. So I don't need to think which parachain I'm on. And I think this is the first step, but also the most important one. Ideally, it should work like a cash machine, right? Like an ATM. You withdraw cash and you don't care how banks talk in the background. And if we get to that point with blockchain, specifically within a Polkadot ecosystem, we have this potential that we have standalone parachains, customizable, but still easily connectable to one another. If we get to this point where I, as a user, don't have to worry about whether I'm Kintsugi, Akala, Moonbeam, whatever, I think then we've made the first big step towards proper usability and adoption.
Yeah, when we start to see that really in action, I think we will truly have shifted into kind of the decentralized frame of mind. I think, obviously early on, ICOs and things like that were just kind of ways to bootstrap ideas. Like, how do we get things started? It wasn't really any like tangible decentralized app kind of scenario where like you explained, you're just not thinking about the tokens. It really was all about the tokens and the teams associated with the tokens. Now this outcome that you kind of describe, where it's like, well, nobody cares what's happening behind the scenes. It could be this token or that token. It's just crossing chains. um it does kind of detract from the idea that like you're connected to a specific community though in some certain ways. So do you think that like um do you think user focus will be more about the dApps and things like that and like the attachment to that, or do you still think that people will kind of associate as being like a Kintsugi user or a Kilt user, or what? Do you think that's going to go away? You think people will like find that less important to be supporters of those, or like how do you see that shaking out?
I mean, what I hope to see happen is that people focus on dApps and the applications rather than the chain itself. The chain is the chain is the infrastructure, right? I'm not really tied to a piece of infrastructure normally, right? I really care about the app. Like if we talk about phones, yes, we have iOS and Android. We don't talk about the underlying chips, right? I mean, maybe they're like because they're produced by specific producers, but normally you don't hear people saying, "Oh, I really like this piece of hardware." No, I like Android or I like
Hmm.
Apple or Samsung, right? So you really focus on the brands, and I really hope that we can get to that point in the crypto ecosystem as well, where you say, "Hey, look, I'm a Kintsugi user, or not Kintsugi in this case, but a KBTC or NTBTC user. I use the application, and that's what I really care about. And I use it on all chains. And I use this in application on Cosmos, on Ethereum, on Polkadot, on Kusama. And that's what's important to me. And not necessarily I'm part of only Interlay and then I'm really going to stick to this community only then. Because I think our goal is to build bridges and not walls, essentially.
Um, so let's shift topics a little bit here. I do want to talk a little bit about the Polkadot win here. So my favorite question here for teams that are actually delivering chains on both Kusama and Polkadot is like, how were things different? Was it easier, harder to prepare for Polkadot? What was your experience there?
I mean, it was definitely easier. With Kintsugi, we were making one mistake after the other, essentially, right? We were completely new to this, and we had hoped to learn more from batch one on Kusama, but the batches were so close to one another, and we, as you maybe recall, we announced pretty late that we're going to join Kusama and barely won at the end of the second batch, only
Yeah.
realizing then there's going to be tons of more slots open. But what I already can say is that all the infrastructure, all the integrations we're building right now, all the wallets, explorers, all the XCM channels, everything that's happening in Kintsugi, this will be available on Interlay right away, right? We're not doing, it's not double the work. It's just, it's the same code base. It's the same system. And that's why I love Kusama. The beauty of this is you really have a real network, a real community. People test, experiment, always knowing, okay, right, this is experimental. We're going to be really breaking things. We're going to try to break it higher risk, higher return, obviously. And then we can take this to Polkadot, and we're ready. It's not like we've tested in production already. It's not like we're completely new launch and everything is new and things might break, but it's actually battle tested. So for us, it's of course there's an overhead and to deployments and I think our DevOps engineers are struggling a bit because of course now you need to maintain more nodes. But overall, I think it's very beneficial, especially mid long term. Like initially, the setup is of course more effort, but I think over the next half year, we'll definitely see the fruits of this.
What was like the biggest challenge compared to Kusama, or was it pretty just similar?
I mean, for us, Interlay was much more relaxed. On Kusama, we were basically struggling, right, to win this last Parachain slot and was
Mm-hmm.
really ahead, like toe to toe race with others. On Interlay, we were able to take slot 10, and there's another slot going on, and we felt that we were quite certain that we're going to win this one. So for us, it was a matter of making sure we educate the community and everything is up and running. But overall, it felt more relaxed because we'd done this once, right? We went through the stressful process of a crowd loan, and um, you kind of get used to it, I guess.
Yeah. So when Kusama opened up auctions for the first time, there was like a pretty mad scramble to like be like one of the first chains, and like it was this like intense excitement. It seems like now people realize like there's probably enough room for people to get in who need to get in, and probably less stress around that. And Polkadot kind of had a similar scenario. Now that things have kind of cooled off in that respect, do you in hindsight look back and think like, well, maybe we should have taken some more time and just paced it, or are you still happy about the way you guys like approached it?
So, I mean, it's a difficult question. So the thing is, locking up more KSM in the crowd loan doesn't mean that our project is going to be more successful. It kind
Yeah.
of does imply that more people are interested and see the value of this for the ecosystem. But the stress and the focus on the crowd loan itself, that we had to sacrifice a few other things. We had to delay other things on development side just to make sure we win the crowd loan. Only then to realize that there's another 48 slots that were announced. Before, it wasn't clear, right, what the schedule would have been. So had we waited for another 2-3 weeks, we would have known that, hey, look, there's tons of more crowd loans and Parachain slots opening up in Kusama. Kusama is stable, perfect, we're good to go. So in hindsight, I think, I mean, I probably would not have stressed that much, knowing that there's more slots right away and that it won't delay our launch. But yeah, if I had to make the choice, I would have basically tried to launch Kusama earlier and left, and would have tried to have more time for teams to launch on Kusama before the Polkadot auctions. Because even for us, it was kind of stressful. Like KBTC,
Mhm.
the main product, is launching now because so many updates were pushed to Kusama first because they needed on
Yeah.
Polkadot. So we're basically chasing like upgrades and losing days here, weeks here, just to make sure
Yeah.
that the system keeps producing blocks. It is experimental, so it makes sense. Um, but yeah, I mean, it ideally would have happened earlier in Kusama or a bit later
Yeah.
in Polkadot.
Yeah, it also feels so real though still. Like, it's like I don't think that people necessarily like treat it 100% like an experimental network, right? Like there's still like real stuff happening, obviously. And I think it's probably good that the the network has kind of like sorted this out early on. Part of the beef that I had with a lot of the ICO projects is like there's just like 99% of the focus is on like raising money, and then it's like the 1% is like, well, the project, and it's because that money was funding development for a long time. It's like you have to upfront all front load all the costs, and so it kind of created a weird situation. Like the incentive structure wasn't right. I think in this case, because the amount that you lock up for the crowd loan is not as important as like the actual output of your project and like the long term strength of it. I think it's a much healthier situation for all these projects. And to be honest, it looks like that's what we're seeing happen out in front of our eyes. Is like the projects seem to be more substantial, less like garbage, we'll say, than what we saw early on with like a lot of the ICO token projects. So that's really good. So tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you guys. Now that you've won the Polkadot slot, what's next on the list?
Well, now next on the list is obviously onboard as a Parachain, which is happening on the 11th. And following that, really push to release all the all the wallets, explorers, the transfer staking apps, all as soon as possible. We've just released everything on Kintsugi. Everything is basically hence ready for Interlay. And then, of course, the focus switches on InterBDC. Right now, we have 40 vaults running on our testnet, ready to switch to Kintsugi mainnet. We're probably going to start raising ceilings pretty slow. So background, Kintsugi, KBTC works similar to MakerDAO in terms of collateral ceilings. We have governance who has to keep raising ceilings to allow more KBTC to be minted. And as we do that and we reach a certain amount of volume, we'll basically switch over to InterBDC in that case, and then you'll have two assets, one backed by KSM, the other one backed by DOTS. And then we'll start adding more collateral assets. And the process will be risky collateral assets like liquid staking and everything that is experimental and has not been tested before by larger stablecoin projects will go to Kintsugi. The bigger ones like USDC and any other big stablecoins will try to push directly to Interlay. So the goal will be essentially push out Bitcoin on both Kusama and Polkadot as soon as possible. And from there, first to all Parachains and then to Cosmos and Ethereum. So that's kind of the horizon for 2022.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a packed roadmap. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys are going to come out with in the next few weeks, months, and I hope you have a great year. I know we only have you for a little bit longer, so I want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that I haven't been able to bring up that you'd like to let our listeners know about? Anything special or interesting?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I mean, there's so much interesting stuff.
Probably a ton of stuff.
Absolutely. Sure. So I have to choose wisely. What I definitely want to, I think, point out is that essentially our systems are decentralized from day one. We've been asked a lot why we chose this approach and not basically decided to do gradual decentralization. And for us, essentially, because we cater also to the Bitcoin community, it has to be decentralized. Like there is no excuse that people would accept. And most people who will use InterBDC really care about decentralization. So when we launch the Kintsugi chain, also the same case will be for Interlay, the first thing we do is disable sudo and allow community to govern the system. Mm-hmm. And then it's really in the hands of the community. And all we do is propose and ask, hey, do you think this makes sense? And it might sometimes be slower. That's why we have optimistic governance implemented. So we try to really make sure that proposals that are agreed among the community, not disputed, can be pushed through quite fast. And then if there's a dispute, of course, then you have this kind of standard majority vote. And what we've seen is it works quite well. We're quite fast to execute. People are getting more and more engaged. And it's really a great feeling to know that, well, actually, there's people caring about the project and really looking forward to using it.
Yeah, definitely. And governance is a really tough topic to tackle and do right. So it sounds like you guys have an interesting approach there. Thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Huge thank you to Alexei Zamyatin and to our listeners. Make sure to like, subscribe, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And until next time, I'm Brian Hoffman, and this has been the Parachain Auctions Podcast. This content is not financial or investment advice. All interviews and discussions are opinions only. Kraken does not endorse the accuracy of this content. None of the following information should be construed as a recommendation to support any specific Parachain project or to participate in Parachain auctions in general. See our terms of service for more information.